you like beer?
Do you like podcasts?
Do you like beer podcasts?
Then check out Crackin' One Open, a podcast about brews, news, and pop culture reviews.
Every week, we crack open a new craft beer from breweries around the country.
And sometimes the world.
We'll talk about how it was made, what's in it, the history of the brew, and the brewery.
Then we'll give our tasting notes, and while we're finishing up, we'll talk about some of the latest goings-on in the world of pop culture.
So check out Crackin' One Open with Mike and Elise, part of the Forgotten Entertainment family.
Hi there, I'm Lloyd.
And I'm John, and we're from Panache Comics. As we dive into your favorite pop culture topics, we may just
Occasionally
use language that could be considered
globaloney.
what? No, I mean,
Foul.
exactly. Offensive.
No doubt. Crass.
You bet your ass.
Sophisticated.
What? No. Anyways, you get it by now. It's mostly just
Gutter talk.
And one more thing. Watch out for spoilers. Sometimes we drop them like trousers. You've been warned.
Listen in.
Well, we made it, folks. Here we are, Pint of Comics. The Manster's with me. I'm John. Another year. It's 2021. We've survived 2020. And let's be honest, maybe we didn't. We're recording this in 2020, but this is our first episode of 2021. So I'm being.
You just gave away the illusion.
But you know, the illusion is the illusion. This episode is going to be released on January 1st. And I figured this out. This will be episode 168. The pint will hit 200 before the year's end, so that's something to be excited about.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing for us to get this far. It's pretty cool. The radio show is on the same track, so we're almost at 200 episodes. We're actually at the same number of episodes, I think, podcast and radio show at this point, even though the radio show started later. So congratulations to John on that as well, in terms of. Yeah. You know, moving into 200 episodes there weekly. But here we are, 2021, first episode of our 5th calendar year in existence. So the Pint started in April 23rd of 2017 was the very first episode of Pint of Comics. So 2017, 2018, 19, 20, 21. And this will be our, what you consider it, 4th, I guess, full year.
4th year, yeah.
4th full year. So it's all very exciting. So
let me ask you, how did you feel about the holidays last year in 2020?
Oh boy, you know, even though for us at this point they didn't happen yet, I don't
happen. I don't know what you're talking about.
I know. I'm not going to play the illusion game. No, you know what? I'm you know, it's like every year. I'm not a huge holiday guy anyway. I found an activity that I don't know if I'm going to make it through at the time of recording, and by January 1st we'll know. I joined a Facebook group that someone invited me to. Called
I saw that.
Called Whamageddon. what Whamageddon is a bunch of people on a Facebook group. I'll send you guys invites if you'd like to play.
Yeah, you already sent me one.
Did I
don't know if I joined or not?
No, I don't think you did. So the whole idea is you have to get from December 1st. Oh, you can only join if it hasn't happened yet, through December 24th. Okay, Christmas Eve, without having heard Wham's Last Christmas. And as people hear it, like if they're in like an elevator or a grocery store, they go on and tell the story about how they got whammed. So
they slam their money down on the table and say, I'm out.
And this is the point that we were at in 2021 last year, that how desperate I'm getting for new things to do is that I'm actively excited about avoiding wham. And I like that song. So like,
yeah,
if I make it to the 24th, I don't generally listen to Christmas music past that, but I might have like an all day Christmas day. Like I'll have what I'll call a whamathon. So right. It's going to be great fun. Every year, starting last year, here's how we started this. A couple years ago, we had our good friend on, Andrew Morgan from the Nomcast, the Netflix original movie podcast. Great podcast, great friend. And Andrew has been around since the early days of the show, and he's one of the few out there that I don't mind like giving ideas to. He came up with the idea of us doing the Back to the Future trilogy episode that you bailed out on. We'll talk about that. I think Andrew kind of came up with the idea, or we came up with the idea together of doing these top 5 of certain year films. So top 5 we did in late 20, I think 19, we did top 5 of 1999, I believe we did.
Was it 99?
We did. Did we do 99?
Yeah, we did 99.
We did 99.
99, okay.
Did 99 with Andrew, and then we were going to do 2000 with Andrew. That was our first episode of 2020. So we were trying to do a thing here. See, so it was 2020. We went 20 years back, did 2000. Andrew, at the beginning of 2020, proving what a shit year it was. He had massive issues with his house. Couldn't make that one. Now here we are, first episode of 2021, and I said, well, we should do this every year. Let's just do the first. We'll do it again, but the first episode every year could be a top 5, and we'll figure out what year to go with. And I was thinking about years, and I thought, let's go 30 back this time. So Andrew is here with us today to talk about our top 5 favorite films of the year of our Lord, 1991. Andrew, what's going on? What's new? And what is kicking this year in 2021 for the Nomcast? And, which, again, a great show, and people need to hear this if they have not heard this.
Yeah, congratulations, guys, on getting past the rapture. Who would have saw that coming at the tail end of 2020? But thank you guys for having me back on. It's always a pleasure. You guys are the best. But yeah, no, the December for Netflix releases was is their big Oscar dump. So they have Mank, which, as we're recording it, just came out today. That's David Fincher's new movie. Just came out. That's got a lot of Oscar buzz. We'll see if the Oscars happen or whether the Locusts come out before then. I'm not sure how that works in the order of plagues. They have that one. They have The Prom, which is a big-time musical with Meryl Streep and James Corden and all these other bigger names. And then Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which is the last movie for Chadwick Boseman before he passed away, which they're talking about Oscar stuff. Midnight Sky, which, unless something terrible happens to John the next few weeks, will be on with me doing that one. That's George Clooney, where he's directing and starring in that for Netflix. So they have a bunch of stuff all at the end of the year, and then have a few more spilling into January. So and that was after they came off, and they're still having a big Christmas season every year. They have a big, horror, October and all that stuff. So it's always jam-packed with Netflix. So I never get bored.
You watch so much Netflix original content because that's your show and that's essentially your job. Simultaneously jealous of you, and I feel bad for you. I'm jealous of you.
I get that a lot.
I'm jealous of you when you get to watch something and review something like His House, which I saw
Awesome.
a month ago or so and absolutely loved. A true horror gem, incredible movie. But then I also realized that you have to watch stuff like UB Halloween, which I watch with my wife. Now I have a high I have a high tolerance for Adam Sandler stuff in terms of I get what this guy's all about, right? I get it. He did his funny stuff early. He created his lifestyle into a job, right? So him and his friends go places. They film these stupid movies that you get 5 or 6 laughs out of, and it's essentially a vacation for them that they're getting paid for. And I'm okay with that because every once in a while he'll do an Uncut Gems. He's a good actor. He's a talented dude. I like him because I like Adam Sandler
for sure.
But then I watch UB Halloween and go, you have pushed it too far this time, sir.
I wouldn't call, it's a choice of a movie. It's bizarre. It's got, horror elements that you wouldn't think of, but it's also so family friendly and corny and goofy at the same time that it's just awful in many places. Tim Meadows is good in that movie. Outside of that, it's pretty brutal, and it stars every person you ever thought of, including the most bizarre Shaquille O'Neal performance that should have.
I just heard about the Shaquille O'Neal thing.
Yeah, it would have been awkward and off-putting in the 90s, let alone now, and it's wow. It is something that I completely did not expect. Netflix to be like, yeah, this is fine. But here we are.
Well, let's just hope. Let's hope as we move forward that in October of 2021, you don't get stuck talking about Hubie Halloween 2.
No, but I'm sure they will.
Which should be titled, if they're going to do it, To Be Halloween.
That's very true.
Yeah. So, all right.
Which one is replaced it, by the way? Real quick survey. So every second movie used to be the play on Break Into Electric Boogaloo. Like every sequel was Electric Boogaloo. Now it turned into me, like every time a sequel comes up, I do like Too Fast, Too Furious, but I do like Too Hubie, Too Halloween.
Yeah.
Like it's always that structure now. Which one is prevailing now? I know we're in 2020. Both movies are sort of old at this point, but like it just every time a sequel comes up, I always immediately think of those two.
I like Electric Boogaloo because that's a classic, but I will admit I do go along with the 2-2 joke. I even do. I did it, I think, a couple weeks ago on one of Larry's watch parties. We were talking. I actually did do. I remember it now. We were talking about Maniac Cop, and he showed Maniac Cop one week, and then Maniac Cop 2 the next week.
Right.
And someone said, "What's week after going to be Maniac Cop 3?" And I put, I think 3 Maniac, 3 Cop, because it just it works. It just works with everything.
Yeah, or in every 3 is in 3D. You have to do that joke too. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
I still prefer the Electric Boogaloo myself.
For sure.
The Canon. Did you ever see the documentary about Canon Films? It's actually called Electric Boogaloo. Because Electric Boogaloo was a Canon film, so I can't remember what the actual title is. It's like, the Canon Films documentary. Semicolon Electric Boogaloo. Like even they jump in the joke too.
Yeah.
All right, so we're here again to talk about the year of our Lord 1991. I was I was a fresh-faced 15-year-old back then. Manster was probably in his 4th year of medical school at that point.
I was in my first year of living on my own after I moved out of my parents' house after college.
Good God. And Andrew,
he was 35 years old.
35. And Andrew was probably a fresh-faced, maybe 10-year-old, 11-year-old?
9-year-old, yeah.
9-year-old, my Lord.
Yeah.
All right. So do your math. You can figure out what years we were born in. But so this will give you an idea. I say that as kind of a litmus to tell you maybe what to expect, what we're going to see on these lists. I have a movie. I was talking to somebody about this list the other day, and there's a movie in my brain that if it's not on Andrew's list, I'll be massively surprised. I'll reveal it at the end. If it's not on his list, if he says it, I'll say, holy shit, there it is. Because it's a movie that is very popular with kids of a certain age at that time that I never cared for. So we'll get to that.
Yeah, you're not going to get it, John. I think I know what you're talking about.
Okay. All right. I'm excited. I'm excited about that.
This is a grown-up doing a retrospective, learning his mistakes.
Okay. All right. Well, but I mean, the last time we did, you know what, we didn't do 99.
We did 1990.
We did 1990. Yes. Because you had Kindergarten Cop and you had Home Alone.
Yes.
Right. And I was like, yeah, I was a kid, remember? And now I'm like, yeah, but there's a limit. This is what I'm learning.
There's been a lot of growth in the last year for you, Andrew.
Because I don't want to jump too far ahead or step on with the hosting duties or anything, John, but 91 is not a very good year. Like
no.
It's top heavy, and it's characterized by, which is not going to show up too much on my list, but it's characterized to me by its huge box office successes at the top, and then a lot of like studio comedies that don't exist anymore, like those style ones anymore. And it's a wild year. A lot of IP. Every 30 years they say like basically we recycle the same ideas. Whether it's fashion, music, TV, like. Right now, you're going to see like the reinvention of rock alternative probably soon. Like the grunge movement's going to come back in some way. This year, I mean, the studio comedies is unreal, and like most of them are not on my list, even though they do hold a place in my heart. Like shout out to Dutch.
Yeah.
Like, that's a movie. I don't know if it's on anyone's top 5, but that movie used to play on Comedy Central like every few days, and I would watch it every single time. But it's not on my list.
Nothing burps like bacon is a quote from that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we were mistaken earlier. We did 1990 and we did 2000. And on 90 and 2000, I had a hard time kind of like getting it down to 5. And on 91, I have 6 true, that I had to fight two of them off for number 5. But
Right.
honestly, after that, honorable mentions are just that. You know what I mean? This was the easiest to compile 5. Manster, did you find this to be the easiest one to compile 5 for?
I found this very easy to compile for, and I really didn't have like one that stood out beyond that. So I kind of have gone back and forth several times for the 5th one.
All right, so you know what we're going to do? We're going to start with the Manster. He'll start with his 5. Again, as we do this normally, whatever order you want to put them in is fine, but please have your number 1 be your number 1. We'll go Manster, we'll go down to Andrew, we'll come up to me, and then we'll shuffle around to round number 2. So Manster, Happy New Year 2021. I love you.
Happy New Year.
I love you, my brother. Thank you for doing this with me. Let's start it off right, and let's start off with whatever your number 5 is, which makes me think that this movie you don't really give too much of a shit about because you had to jam it in there. But let's talk about it a little bit. What do you have for number 5, 91?
I had to jam it in there. Let's see. I'm gonna
Title of your sex tape.
Here we go. All right. I am pointing at JFK, the Oliver Stone blockbuster that basically conflated historical records and conspiratorial fantasies. Boom.
So are you actually...
And it did it well. It did it well.
I don't think I've ever seen that movie. I think back when I was 15, it was maybe not interesting enough. And now as an adult, when I read that it's like 4 hours long, I don't have that attention span anymore. I still have not watched The Irishman because I just don't have like 3 hours at once. And I know you can break things up, but I don't like to do that. I like to watch things in one shot. So
I believe it's 3 hours and 9 minutes. I'm not saying it could have been shorter, or I'm not saying it couldn't have been shorter because it definitely could have, but I think everything in there is fine. It's not like you could really cut out an hour of that movie or anything.
And Oliver Stone doesn't cut a damn thing. So
no.
But there was 15 stars. I'm not going to name all 15, but you got Kevin Costner, Kevin Bacon, Tommy Lee Jones, Joe Pesci, Gary Oldman, Sissy Spacek, Donald Sutherland, Laurie Metcalf.
John Candy's in it too. Briefly,
John
right?
Candy. Yep.
Yeah. We don't get movies like that anymore. You notice that? Like, you don't get movies where you get 15 well-known actors in one thing. You know what I mean? Like, even if you get a movie where
Newman.
well, what's his name?
Wayne Knight.
You said Wayne Knight. I was going to say Dennis Nedry. But you don't get movies that jam that many bigger stars into a film anymore. And
That's right.
You might get 1 or 2 big stars and then some people that are like, TV actors that or, a little bit lower end. And I get it. I understand, like, Wayne Knight isn't a big star, but, Tommy Lee Jones, Kevin Bacon, Kevin Costner, right off the bat, that's 3 there that would cost most movies their whole budget.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I think that's really what it is.
I'm not sure if I have the budget. No, I didn't have the budget. No. I do have $70.4 million, though. That's what it made.
Which back then was pretty damn good.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it also inspired, I don't know if there's more, probably inspired other skits or movies or shows, but inspired the Magic Loogie in Seinfeld.
Yes.
Also
Wayne Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back
Shout
into
out to
the
Keith
left.
Hernandez. Yeah.
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 That
Keith
is one
Hernandez.
Magic Loogie.
Back into the right. Back into the right. All right. So that's Manster's number 5. That's his, I think, his least passionate one. We'll get around to the 4 he loves. Let's get down to Andrew. Let's go to number 5 and find out what got him going in 91.
Well, I'll say I rewatched this movie for the podcast. I'm glad I did because it's been a while, but I remember liking it when I first watched it, and it only ages better, and it'll come to no shock. Like for anybody who's heard me on these podcasts, and somewhere Sir John is rolling his eyes because yes, I am saying yet another Coen Brothers film, Barton Fink.
Never saw it. I've heard it's great though.
Yeah, have you seen it?
I did not see that either. No, I had it on my list here. I was doing some research and I'm like, I really should check that movie out, but I did not get a chance to.
It is an interesting film. It's not top tier Coen, obviously, by the fact that you both have not even watched it. But basically, it's one of Goodman's best roles, and Goodman gets all his best roles from the Coen brothers. I mean, between Big Lebowski, Raising Arizona, Oh Brother Where Art Thou, go on down the list, but. This one is right up there with his best work, and basically, it's it's hard because we're doing 30 years, but you don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen the film. But like basically, it's about John Turturro plays a New York playwright who's enticed to go to California to write for the movies, and basically he gets holed up in this hotel room. He tries to not go for this lavish hotel because he wants to be grounded with his people and write a movie about the common man and like all this like hoity-toity BS. And that's where he ends up being neighbors in his floor with John Goodman, who's an insurance salesman. Later on in the film, in classic Coen fashion, it is not what it seems to be, and especially this is the time period with Coen's movies especially, that they would just go from being where you think it's a subtle film about these simple themes, and then it ends up being this really like flashy, over the top, horrifically violent ending that just throws you for a loop and gets into this massive twist. And I know in the 1990 one we talked about Miller's Crossing a little bit,
right?
Yeah, that was on my list.
Yeah, and this is the film that comes right on the heels of that, and Turturro obviously was in that film, and this is the first film for the Coen brothers shot by Roger Deakins, who's an absolute cinematography legend. The person who used to shoot all their films is now director Barry Sonnenfeld, who couldn't do this movie because he was shooting what might be on one of your guys' lists, I don't know, the Addams Family reboot, the movie with Raul Julia.
Oh yeah.
So, and he went on
with Christina Ricci.
Yes. And he ended up going on to do like Men in Black and other such films. So like he ended up becoming a director of note in his own right, but this was the first movie he bailed on the Coens, and they ended up picking up Roger Deakins, and then he shot like every great movie you've ever seen ever since, like Shawshank, Fargo, No Country for Old Men. He won for 1917 last year, Blade Runner 2049, Skyfall, et cetera, et cetera. Like, he is the man. He's the best cinematographer I've ever seen. And this is his first movie he's done with the Coens.
All right. Yeah. We talked about Deakins quite a bit on our 1917 episode with Paul from the Countdown podcast.
That's right.
Yeah. And obviously those movies you just said, whether, I'm not a huge fan of Blade Runner 2049, but my God,
it's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. It's absolutely, yeah. Everything you said there is a gorgeous film. All right. So that's Andrew's number 5. All right. My number 5 is where I had a problem. I had 2 movies that were fighting it out pretty much till today. I still don't feel great about this choice. This was very much a Sophie's choice. But I love both of these movies. I feel bad that I had to drop one. But I did rewatch this movie last week. Kind of coincidentally, like I thought about it along lines of this as well because I knew we were doing it, but I was also bored. I went on Disney Plus and I said, I have not seen The Rocketeer in a long time.
I felt like that was going to be on somebody's list.
I threw The Rocketeer on, and my Lord, I had not seen it in quite a few years. What a great movie, based on the Dave Stevens comic book. Directed by Joe Johnston, who has done a bunch of stuff, Jurassic Park 3, and he's done a bunch of, he did Captain America, the First Avenger, which I think because, the time period is so close, I think, he really almost got a leg up on that because he did The Rocketeer.
Yeah.
He's worked with Spielberg for years. He's one of Spielberg's guys. The Rocketeer is a, what is it, like maybe late 30s, early 40s, came out in the summer of 91. I remember seeing it in the theaters, very excited about seeing it that year. And it is just this superhero story that takes place against the backdrop of like I said, the late 30s. Cliff Secord is a pilot. He finds a rocket pack that's been stolen and designed by Howard Hughes is in this thing, and there's intrigue. There's Nazis. This feels almost like it's a movie made in the vein of an Indiana Jones film, which it very much is in line of. It ended up coming out on June 21st. It made $46.7 million, which apparently was not enough to start any kind of franchise, which is too bad because imagine a world where we could have had a Rocketeer film every 3 years. I think it would have been a better world. I want to point 2 things out real quick. Great cast. First of all, Alan Arkin, who plays Cliff Secord's kind of mentor. He's almost like his man Friday, is so good in this movie. He's always good, but he's so good in this movie. He has this bizarre Midwesternish accent that it just sticks in your head. Jennifer Connelly maybe has never looked better. She is so friggin' gorgeous in this movie, in the 30s clothing, dresses, her breasts, her face, every piece of
I like
this.
me some Jennifer Connelly, and I've never seen this. So
she's so beautiful. And on top of that, On top of that, the lead actor is Billy Campbell, who essentially has had a working career in Hollywood since then. He's been on TV shows, he's done other things, but this should have been the movie that jumped him, and he didn't. He was in Bram Stoker's Dracula a year later in a minor role. He never became the next big thing, but my God, if you watch this movie, this guy, he's good, first of all, and you say what you want to say, he's gorgeous. You look at this guy, he just has this face that if you were like a young kid and someone said, like, when you get older, what do you want to look like? I would point at that guy and go, if I can look like that, I'll be good for the rest of my life. Just a good looking guy, great action movie. Timothy Dalton, who at that point was still technically Bond. I don't think he had dropped out of that yet because that was all in flux, plays the bad guy. So he shows a little bit of his range. Lloyd, if you've never seen it, you've got Disney Plus.
Yeah, I've got to see it. Oh, it's on Disney Plus?
It's on Disney Plus. It's a fantastic movie. I can't imagine you walking away from it, even if you don't like it. I can't imagine you walking away and not being impressed by the production design. It's just a beautiful movie. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie.
If I had seen that, maybe I wouldn't have had such a tough choice with my number 5.
Yeah. So you know what? Check The Rocketeer out, and then on the next episode we record, I'll let you, if you want, slide it in there.
All right.
All right.
Title of your sex tape.
Yeah. And it's the title of my sex tape. You got to do
let you slide it in.
That's it. And well, no, you have to say it like as I repeated it. I'll let you slide it in. All right, Master, what's your number 4? Now we're getting into the nitty gritty. What do you got?
Yeah, we're already in our top 4. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So my 4 and my 3, they could easily be switched out with each other. So I'm going to go number 4, first-time director, African-American, 24 years old, John Singleton, Boys in the Hood.
Nice. Released
on July 12th of that year. Budget of $6.5 million.
Yeah, nothing.
And made 57.5. This is amazing. I mean, he was nominated for Best Director and Screenplay. I believe the first African-American and the youngest ever to be nominated. This movie has Cuba Gooding Jr., Angela Bassett. I believe is he billed as Larry Fishburne.
Yeah,
at that point he is. Yeah.
Ice Cube, Angela Bassett, and Larry Fishburne. Kind of a little prologue of their future. What was it? The Ike and Tina movie.
What's Love Got to Do with It?
Yeah, What's Love Got to Do with It? Yeah. Really good. You know, basically it's a depiction of growing up in the inner city Los Angeles. You know, it draws heavily on John Singleton's own experiences. You see the harsh urban realities of, too many of African-American lives. I think it was really shocking, I think, to audiences who just really don't know that lifestyle. I think it really showed it in a really amazing way, gunplay, police intimidation, drive-by shootings. And he really gave us characters to care for. Even the crappy characters, even the Ice Cube character, you really felt for this guy. And, his friend, the guy who wanted to play football, terrible thing happens, And then you've got also a little subtext of African-American fathers, the way Lawrence Fishburne and Cuba Gooding, their relationship. Just a fantastic movie. I love this thing.
I will say, I don't know if anyone has this problem too. I'll say first and foremost, you're absolutely right, Lloyd. That movie is really well done. It unfortunately is one of those movies that happened right at the right time in the wrong way, where it was right around Rodney King, and you're dealing with all that aftermath and really stirring up a lot of things and really getting to see the ground level for those things. But one of these things, it's one of those movies, especially because, like I said, I was 9 years old when it came out, so I didn't get to see it until I was much older. But it was ruined for me, and I always remember this story. This comedian, Mike Lawrence, who's very funny. Anyone should look him up. He's got a Comedy Central Presents. He's very funny. But he has this joke that he says that he watched Spaceballs before he watched Star Wars. So when he watched Star Wars was just unfunny Spaceballs. So if you watch things in the wrong order, because obviously Don't Be a Menace was a big movie when I was a teenager. And so between that and Friday, it killed movies like this for me until much later, when I can just kind of separate myself and actually enjoy it for what it was. But it took me so long to appreciate a movie like that. astounding.
For a 9-year-old like your age, and even me, I didn't see it. But Boys in the Hood, I was 15 again. I didn't see it in the theaters. I remember friends seeing it, and I remember seeing it like maybe a year or two later on home video, and because it's a serious movie, and not just that, but it's like what Lloyd said, with everything that it tackles. It was a cultural phenomenon because you didn't really get a lot of films that looked at that segment of life in that manner, that took it seriously and gave you, again, like you said, Lloyd, in the movie, let's go right into it. We've got this huge stereotype in African-American families that the fathers aren't always there. And Lawrence Fishburne's character is there. And he is nothing but concerned about Cuba Gooding Jr.'s, growing up in this environment where things necessarily aren't the best. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is. It's such a good movie. You're right. The last 20 minutes, a lot of bad shit happens. And again, Cuba Gooding Jr. kind of didn't, between that and Jerry Maguire, he never really fully grasped onto his potential. But watch that last 15 minutes with him in this movie and tell me that guy's not a great actor who just makes a lot of bad choices. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But yeah, you're right. Okay. Boys in the Hood, numero cuatro for Lloyd. Let's go down to Andrew and find out if his movie is there yet. I have a feeling it's going to be there. What do you got for 4?
It is. No, I'm telling you, it's not this one. Because it's funny because you guys usually post on social media, to get to see what some people's responses are. And I saw 0 people say this movie. So I'm very fascinated to see if you guys have even seen this, let alone like this movie. So I'm curious. It's the first comedy that I'm going to have, but it's kind of a dramedy in a way. A very underrated guy wrote and directed this movie, Albert Brooks, a movie called Defending Your Life.
Remember it, never saw it.
I don't recall seeing it.
Wow. Yeah, it is good. It is, for rental right now. It's not on any of the streaming, which I was annoyed, but it was definitely worth the rental to watch it again. It's got Albert Brooks, Meryl Streep, Rip Torn, all doing really amazing jobs. Basically, it's an afterlife movie. So basically, this guy who is, in advertising, it's his birthday and he picks up a new car, and while he's in the car he gets into a car accident, dies, and then ends up in the afterlife. But the afterlife is the way they pose it, and this is only, I don't know when was Heaven Could Wait, the late 70s?
Yeah.
So it compares a lot to that in a way, but this is kind of like an updated, again, for 1991 version, where they go into kind of this purgatory where you get to eat as much as you want and see everything and see your past lives and do all these fun things. But you also, during the day, have kind of like a lawyer that sits with you and defends multiple episodes of your life, basically. And they decide whether you move on to become like a higher plane human and stay in that afterlife, or whether you go back and have to try life again. While Albert Brooks is there, he actually falls in love with Meryl Streep, and part of his kind of like growth as a human being. Because honestly, I see myself a lot in Daniel, the guy who he plays, because he's kind of like this sarcastic, self-deprecating guy who, doesn't think a ton of himself, and just, kind of has to, he's plagued by fear. He's plagued by the fear of failure, and always kind of like, tries to cover it with wit. And I'm sure that rings to none of you at all.
Yeah.
And, part of his reclamation and to get over it is involved with Meryl Streep. And this is peak Meryl Streep, by the way, because, she, right after this one, she does, let me see, I had it down. Oh, yeah, she just came off Postcard from the Edge in 1990, which is another kind of dramedy, and then goes on to do Death Becomes Her, The River Wild, Bridges of Madison County. She becomes like this second wave of her Oscar career after like the Kramer versus Kramer and Sophie's Choices of the world early on.
Right.
But this is still when she was really fun and young and hot. Like, yeah. And I don't know if anyone thinks of Meryl Streep as gorgeous.
She has been, absolutely.
This time period is like peak for her, and Albert Brooks is like a mutant compared to her, but it's a fun pair, and they're a very fun pair together. There's even scenes because Albert Brooks, this is his fourth movie he's made at this point, directed, and he writes a lot of his own films, so he's kind of like an auteur in that way. And he even had stuff in this movie that like he did like emulating kind of stuff that happened to his own dad. His own dad died on stage as a comedian at the Friars Club.
Oh, wow.
And he does a joke in this movie where he's at a comedy club in the afterlife, and he kind of goes back at the comedian who asked him how he died, and he goes, on stage like you. And like, so he even points kind of like at his own life and does these kind of self-referential things. It's a brilliant watch. It's a fun watch. It's a tight, what comedy should be, that hour and 40 perfect amount of time to tell a story and be funny. Yeah, be funny, interesting. Rip Torn is excellent in this movie before he became a cartoon of himself later on, like post Men in Black or whatever. I call it the Freddy Got Fingered and Beyond period for Rip Torn, just terrible. But this is when he was still just awesome. So highly recommend this one.
Daddy, would you like some sausage?
It's the only scene I'll ever remember of that movie, and it's so bad.
Yeah. Albert Brooks, I've never seen that, and you in 5 minutes of talking have made me want to see a 30-year-old movie more than I ever would have wanted to see it from anything I saw from it. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah,
it's an interesting concept. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that.
It is. It's right that it's that bitter, sarcastic humor that Albert Brooks does. I think it would be right up your guys' alley.
I'm going to check it out. He did a movie that I think he wrote and directed as well a couple years after that used to be like, I don't know when. I don't know what the time period was, but I used to see it on HBO once in a while, and I liked it quite a bit, with him and Brendan Fraser, called The Scout.
Yeah, it used to be on Comedy Central all the time.
Yeah, where Brendan Fraser plays this really weird Major League Baseball prospect, and Brooks is a scout, and he becomes like a father figure.
Yeah, he literally has to talk him off a ledge in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, Brendan Fraser is like this, like really kind of, there's a lot going on, and he's got father issues. That was really good. So I could see where Brooks can skirt that line of serious and comedy very well.
Yeah, if you think The Scout is good, Defending Your Life will be a very welcomed addition to your Albert Brooks. I mean, the man was Hank Scorpio,
upgrade.
Everybody. Hank Scorpio, for guys.
Yeah, he was Hank Scorpio. Yeah, he was Hank Scorpio. All right, my number 4. Let's see, where am I going to go with this? I'm going to go with it. It was released on February 14th of 1991. So if you want to go out on a Valentine's,
I know what that is.
You want to go out on a Valentine's Day date with your paramour, your loved one. Take them to see this, because in it, on its way to making $272 million.
This is number 4 for you?
Number 4, yeah.
That's wild.
Well,
okay.
But here's the thing. Remember, here's the thing. I wanted to point this out because I thought people would say that. This isn't best 91 movies. This is your favorite. And I do love this movie, but the 3 that come before this, I'm more likely to toss in. I'm more likely to maybe watch more often. So this is a great movie. And I know it's going to be higher on at least Lloyd's list and probably Andrew's. But in any case, you take your date to see this movie, you're going to get to see someone get jizz thrown in their face. You're going to get to see someone wear someone else's face. You're going to get to see a cameo from who was it? Was it Chris Isaac as one of the SWAT guys?
You'll see a face in a jar.
A face in a jar. John. Yeah, a face in a jar. You're going to get to see a grown man stick his dick and balls between his legs and dance to what was the song?
Goodbye Horses.
Goodbye Horses. Yeah. You're going to get to hear the line, "Would you fuck me? I'd fuck me." You're going to go see Silence of the Lambs
over and
over again. You're going to go see Silence of the Lambs because Silence of the Lambs came out.
I was really hoping you were going to say a different movie after all that.
Yeah, you're going to get to see Muppets Take Manhattan. No, so Silence of the Lambs, February 14th, 1991. I saw this in the movie theaters. My dad took me to see this, and the thing that always sticks out to me about Silence of the Lambs, first of all, Lloyd and I just recently did, I'm not sure if it'll have been out at this point or not yet, a Pint Movie Invitational where we talked about Red Dragon. So we did a lot of talking about the Thomas Harris universe. But this was the first time we meet Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. This is a huge role. This is the second movie ever to hit the 5 major Academy Award categories, I believe, right?
It's the third.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
The third. So
so it happened one night, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest did it before this movie.
Okay, so
the third film. Yep.
What were the 5 it hit? What did it hit?
It's Best Director, Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Screenplay.
Right. So Ted Talley, screenplay, Best Actress Jodie Foster, Best Actor Sir Anthony Hopkins, Best Director the late Jonathan Demme, and Best Picture, obviously Silence of the Lambs. It's also, on the down low because the Academy doesn't really like to, I guess, focus on genre type films. Nobody seems to realize that this isn't necessarily a thriller. This is a fucking horror movie. And, it won.
It's a combination, horror, thriller, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, you're never going to see, okay, I understand that, we're not going to say that, Friday the 13th is a horror movie. It's a slasher. Those are never going to get up there because they're not built to get up there. You're never going to even see a good Get Out, right? Get Out might have been nominated in that new category where they put 15 movies up, but in a regular year, something like Get Out, which was a fantastic horror movie, would never get nominated in a 5 category for Best Picture. I don't think it did, right? That's never going to happen. And that movie could have been that year. This thing snuck in there. It wiped everything out, and it entered the pop culture lexicon. I mean, who has not at some point made the sound with their lips where that whole thing?
Yeah, who knew what a fava bean was before you saw this movie?
Right. Right. Who knew what Chianti was?
Sure.
At 15 years old, I didn't know that guys threw cum in women's faces from across the room. I did not know that happened.
Oh, I knew that. I definitely knew that.
It's usually a closer, more intimate thing. I understand, John.
Yeah, well, not from across the room. I mean, I've got my targeting limits, but I mean, no. Again, I think the one person in this entire movie, as time goes on, and as I've seen this movie more, as an adult and through adulthood, the one person who doesn't get enough credit in this movie is what's his name? The actor who plays Buffalo Bill, Ted Levine. Ted Levine should have been, and I don't think he was.
He's that great big fat person.
He should have been nominated for at least a supporting actor. I don't think he was. I could be wrong.
I don't think there was enough screen time.
Oh, you want to talk about screen time? Anthony Hopkins was put in Best Actor category when he was in the movie for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
It's the lowest amount of time anyone's ever won for that award.
Wow. Hey, look at that. You're learning things.
I mean, he brought that character. I mean, that character was created by Thomas Harris in the novels, right? He was great. He was brought to life, brought to the screen in Manhunter, 1986 by Brian Cox. But it's really Hopkins, performance, his ghoulish panache. That's just basically the template for the modern day sadistic sort of brainy villain,
There's a few
awesome. He was intimidating from before you see him. He's intimidating.
There's a few heroes in this movie, and Hopkins is definitely one of them. I mean, he brought so many things that only he could bring to make Lecter what it was. And I think Manhunter is a good movie, by the way.
We all do.
Yeah.
But the fact that he brought in, he changed certain nuances of the film just based on either people that he knew or just observations that he had in life. Some of my favorite Hopkins things that he brought to Lecter was when they bring him in for the first time, they didn't have him in a yellow or orange jumpsuit. They did white because of his fear of dentists. That's hilarious to me because I also am terrified of dentists up until older age. He also borrowed his interpretation of Lecter from a friend in London who rarely blinked when he spoke, and he always thought that was
a lizard,
which that was their thing too.
Quality,
he brought the lizard quality. He actually said he watched reptiles and how they only blink when they want to versus when they need to. So he was doing that purposely in the movie just to make it more menacing. And kudos. Ted Levine also brought in something that is iconic now, but wasn't in the script, was the dance that he does was not in the script. It's in the book, but it wasn't in the original script. And Levine fought for it and got in. And then when they did it, it becomes this iconic. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say he's incredible. He's incredible in that movie. And every time I see him in something else where he doesn't play a bad guy, it's hard to remember that he's not like, I didn't watch Monk, but I know on Monk he was like the captain, and he was like, like I saw episodes here and there, bits and pieces, and he was like a good guy. He was like the good captain who was in Monk's corner. But in the end, you're like, Monk, stay back. That's fucking Buffalo Bill.
yeah. Between that and Heat and Wild West, like,
am I right in remembering that he was in The Hills Have Eyes?
He's the father. Yeah,
he's the father. Yeah, that's right.
He gets put up on that tree and burned to death. Yeah,
he just has an incredible voice. I want him to do just voice acting for the rest of his life. He almost has like an Orson Welles like volume and pitch to his voice. It's so impressive. But yeah, I mean, that's absolutely amazing what he was able to do, and it stuck with me. Like you said, the big fat person thing, and it's just outrageous how successful this movie was. I think Scott Glenn doesn't get enough love
That's
for
right.
how good he is in this movie too. Yeah. And to be honest, I got to him late. I mean, like, he does Backdraft in 1991. I don't know if that's on anybody's list or anything, but that's kind of when he started this turn, was around this time. Hunt for Red October, Backdraft, and Silence of the Lambs. This was kind of like his peak time before he kind of had a resurgence in the last few years. But
he was great in The Leftovers.
I love The Leftovers. It's one of my favorite shows of all time, and he is so good in it.
He was the original actor hired, and he played him in the pilot. And then I think they fired him because they just didn't think it was working. He played the Clay role in the pilot of Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, interesting.
Got fired, and they hired Ron Perlman. So Ron Perlman was not the original actor for that role. It was Scott Glenn. I went real quick before we get to Lloyd's next one. I want to just mention here on the first episode of this year that I am now retiring the Johnny Ganache nickname, and my new nickname is now going to be Ghoulish Panache, because I just like the sound of that better. So, all right, Manster, what is your number 3?
Well, my number 3, I don't know if either of you, I know it's not going to be on your list, John. I don't know if Andrew would care for this, but my number 3, May 24th, written by Callie Corey, directed by Ridley Scott, Thelma and Louise.
I will admit it's another one of those movies. There's so many movies of this time period that, unless they were like such a cut above, got ruined for me in so many ways, that this movie doesn't resonate outside of like the cliff scene and the hotness of Brad Pitt and the first kind of big thing. Like, those things stick for me, but like the rest of it, I really need a rewatch of that movie, because a lot of it doesn't stick with me because I saw it so young in such a naive period.
Actually, being a young man, because it's really a woman's power. I mean, these you got Susan Sarandon, Gina Davis, the two stars, both beyond their Hollywood prime. I say that with air quotes.
How dare you?
They're 35 and 45 at the time. You got Harvey Keitel, Brad Pitt, and Michael Madsen. It was billed as a buddy movie, but basically a female buddy movie, but it's so much more than that, as far as for women's movement. And what's that Bechdel test? Is that, am I thinking of the right word, where they could tell if it's a woman's powerful movie? It has to do with women being friends and their relationships and what they care about, what they talk about on screen and whatnot. Anyway, this passes that. It's transcends, a typical women's friendship genre. They're not there talking about guys. It's not all about that kind of stuff. It's just these two women's lives and figuring out, they basically escaping the constraints of gender, class, place, where they are, where they work. At one point in the movie, Gina Davis, I believe, says, I don't remember ever feeling this awake. They've escaped everything. Of course, they're on the run. I mean, if you don't know the story, they just kind of decide to go on a little girls' trip. Gina Davis gets in a little trouble. This guy's attacks her, tries to rape her in the parking lot of a bar. And Susan Sarandon, Louise, shoots and kills this guy. And they basically just go on the run from there. They don't have any kind of set goal, but they bond and they realize, hey, our life is shit. Life for women is basically shit. And, here's this guy would have raped us, would have gotten away with it. Nothing would ever happen. And so they decided to take things into their own hands. And it's got that iconic ending. They're trapped, basically. Harvey Keitel is the guy who's trying to capture them. Even he's a soft-hearted guy. I mean, he knows they're not killers. They're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they just head for that cliff. They fly over, and that's how it ends. You know, their car is in the air. It does not crash. They don't die. You know, they're just sort of flying away. So I think it's a great movie, especially a great movie for women. You know, it's a touchstone film. It's never been recreated. It's never been updated. It's just a really amazing film. I think it just stands on its own.
I saw it once. I liked it, but I saw it like probably in 1992. It definitely was a return to the big leagues for Ridley Scott, who had kind of sort of disappeared for a little bit there. He kind of hadn't made much big after maybe Legend, the Tom Cruise unicorn movie.
Yeah.
That kind of killed him. So Thelma and Louise kind of brought him back a bit. He kind of squandered it again until Gladiator, but it did bring him back up. Obviously, it introduced the world to Brad Pitt and kind of I won't say introduce the world to, but really kind of put a focus on the idea of, air quotes, like a MILF relationship. Because remember, Brad Pitt at the time was probably like 23, 25. And his scene in the movie is he's banging Gina Davis, who, very hot, but she was, like you said, 35, 36, 37 years old. She's essentially doing what men are supposed to sleep with younger women, but women aren't supposed to do that in brains. You know what I mean? And she does that, and then finally, it's not said enough, but, even probably till now, I would put Susan Sarandon in a rear naked chokehold any day of the week. I don't know what it is about her. I've always kind of had a thing for her.
Unbelievable.
I hate
Susan Sarandon. Yeah.
I absolutely hate. We kind of joked about it before recording. I hate the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but like if I have to watch any bits of it, I could be very much subdued into it because it's like a 22-year-old Susan Sarandon in a white bra for the whole movie.
You need your Janet.
Yeah.
Well, she's not in a bra in this movie, man. She's got like that ruffly shirt. It's buttoned right up to her neck.
Yeah. See, I don't remember what she looked like in this one, but yeah, she's a stone fox. She's a stone cold fox. All right.
It's a good movie. Yeah, you should probably watch it again.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I'll absolutely give it a shot. All right. So Andrew, number 3, what do you got?
I am still sticking to comedies at the moment. This movie, obviously, it did a lot for a lot of people because they made more than one of them. But this movie, it was played constantly when I was a kid. It was one of those rare movies that's kind of a cross section between my parents and I and everyone in the family, and which is weird because this movie is the ultimate midlife crisis movie. It's a little movie called City Slickers. Billy Crystal, an awesome performance from Daniel Stern in his absolute peak. With this movie coming between both Home Alone movies and then him doing Rookie of the Year right after that. This is peak Daniel Stern for that. And then, of course, the Oscar-winning performance, which, again, just to say that from a studio comedy is outrageous, but the Oscar-winning performance for Jack Palance, who couldn't be there's no better casting than him for this movie. I mean, he's literally playing his former self. Yeah. He's just playing, because in the 50s he was a spaghetti Western badass, villain character in so many films, and then finally gets recognized for, I think they said it was some huge number, like 30 years or 25, 30 years between nominations for him in his life. So when they first wrote the script, they instantly, I know Billy Crystal said as soon as he saw it, he was like, Jack Palance has to be Curly. So he was the first thing on everybody's mind. He hit a home run with the role. He won the awards. And this movie, if you've never seen it, if you're our age, I don't know what the hell happened to you, but because they made so much of them, but it gets better with age. If you saw it like when you were younger, like I am, and now watching it when you're the age that Billy Crystal is, like I'm 38 now and Billy Crystal turns 39 in the movie. And there's a lot of beats that he has with his wife and saying being, unhappy with your job and looking for more and trying to find your smile and doing all these things. I'm sure none of this resonates with any of you.
No, yeah. I don't know what you're talking about.
Or people in the pandemic or any of this stuff. But, he's he's just an unhappy kind of, guy stuck in a rut, and they kind of do these little adventure things that kind of give them a little bit of something. And the movie opens, they're on the running of the bulls or whatever, and then they end up doing this where they're gonna drive cattle through the Southwest, and it seems so simple. It's got one of the best like themes, like in terms of music themes I've heard in a long time, like the theme song to a movie that is so iconic. There's two of them in my list that instantly, as soon as I hear the music, I know exactly what movie that is.
Right.
And that'll be my number one. I'm sure it's a lot of your guys' high ups, but man, there's so many great things. Billy Crystal's wearing a Mets hat. I'm a Mets fan. I know he's not a Mets fan, which makes it even better. And for how great Daniel Stern is, he was not even supposed to be like that character. It was supposed to be Rick Moranis, but I think they kind of, in a dark way, lucked into having Daniel Stern, because the only reason why Moranis left was because of why he didn't have a career much past this year, because his wife got cancer. So, it's an unreal movie. Everybody can talk about like the Just One Thing. Everybody can talk about, Curly. Everybody could talk about, the lines in this movie, like nothing like bringing the herd in, or just even going, hello. The Crystal things, there's a young Jake Gyllenhaal who plays Crystal's son in this movie. So that's wild to watch and just retrospect. It hits all the feels, delivering the calf, bringing the cow home. Like there's so many things that is just perfect. Daniel Stern's in a loveless marriage that he gets out of. Like there's so many like triumphant things in such a short movie. And like even just small stuff like the Ben and Jerry's thing is like hilarious. And
the two guys, I haven't, it's funny that you're saying all this because I have not seen City Slickers in easily 20 years.
Yeah.
And as you're talking about it, like the two guys, the Ben and Jerry stand-ins.
Yeah.
The calf's name is Norman. Like it's here. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
it's
lives burned into our brains.
Yeah, it is a really good movie. It suffers minorly from going back to the well with a second one that was nowhere near as good.
No.
Yeah,
that doesn't affect the first one.
It doesn't affect the first one, but it was almost. But sometimes it's almost like I get it why you go back, but like it's almost like, man, that would be just perfect if only one of those existed. What was the guy's name? He passed away. He's dead now. But who played the third friend? Bruno Kirby. He was great in it, and then he didn't come back for the second one. He wasn't dead at that point, but they brought Lovitz in, right? Was that what happened?
Yes, correct. He was like the cousin or whatever that they kind of supplanted his character with. Yeah, Bruno Kirby. Like again, this is peak Billy Crystal and peak Bruno Kirby because they kind of like were synonymous with When Harry Met Sally, which is only the year before. So like Billy Crystal, it's his first movie since Harry Met Sally. He had done Princess Bride, Throw Mama from the Train, Soap a long time ago. Like he had this big push, and this really like just was the capper right after When Harry Met Sally. He was just, between this and Comic Relief, he was just the biggest thing on the planet as far as comedy.
Huge.
Yeah, this movie was at the time huge. Like I saw it on videotape like when it came out, but I remember when it was out in the theaters, this was one of those movies that, at the time, the way you knew a movie was doing well was it was in the theaters for fucking ever. And this was in the theaters for fucking ever.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is in my honorable mentions, and I could not find a streaming service for it, so I did not get to watch it. It is on HBO Max?
It is.
Well, I didn't get to watch it. I would have liked to have watched it. It may have also changed my number 5.
Master,
was really in flux.
Our next recording, we will start it off by allowing you to take JFK out as an addendum and add City Slickers or The Rocketeer or something else that you may have seen from 1991.
Yeah.
All right. So that was number 3 for Andrew, right? And that would bring me to my number 3, which was released on December 6th of 1991. It made a total of $96.9 million. This is the last voyage of the original crew of the Starship Enterprise.
I had a feeling you were going to do that.
Oh, yeah. I watched this incidentally maybe 6 months ago. I kind of watched most of the Star Trek movies at one point. And this is directed by Nicholas Meyer, who directed Star Trek II, the Wrath of Khan, which obviously is widely known as being the best Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
Star Trek movies have that kind of connotation where people always joke that the odd ones are good, the odd ones are bad, the even ones are good.
Yes.
This is an even one. The general idea is that the Enterprise is going to be decommissioned. A moon on Klingon explodes, and it ends up being a very large plot line that is a parallel to the Cold War between America and Russia. Kirk and crew must try to determine who has murdered a Klingon. I guess you could say, I can't remember if he was a general who is on their ship. There's a conspiracy behind it. People in the Federation don't want the Klingons and Starfleet to work together. It's just a great fucking movie. Again, it is, being a Star Trek fan, and in 91 when I saw this in the theaters, I was a Star Trek fan, but I was much less learned in Star Trek. So when you go back and watch it now, I mean, I'm not kidding when I tell you, when I watched this a few months ago, I teared up at the very last scene, because the very last scene is the entire original crew on the deck of the Enterprise. Sulu is now the captain of the Excelsior. They have a moment where Kirk and Sulu say goodbye to each other, and then essentially the Enterprise is going to be decommissioned, and Chekhov asks Kirk, where do we go from here? And Kirk, he quotes Peter Pan, and I'm not going to get the quote correct off the top of my head, but it's, second star to the left, straight on till morning. And the movie ends at that point with the Enterprise taking off into warp, and then instead of typical credits, you get the signatures of all the original actors. You get, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, and it literally is the end of something. Now, yes, 3 years later, Shatner and James Doohan and Walter Koenig come back for small roles in Star Trek VII, handing off, to the Next Generation crew. But this is still the end of something that was very special for, at that point, 25 years. And it's a good fucking movie. A lot of great performances.
It's a good movie, yeah.
It's great. Christopher Lee plays. Is it Christopher Lee? Hold on, not Christopher Lee. Who was the guy in Knives Out who actually plays the victim? Christopher
Plummer.
Christopher Plummer, right? I'm sorry, Christopher Lee, not Christopher. Christopher Lee was not in Star Trek, Star Wars. Christopher Plummer plays this insane, eye-patched Klingon general that is in a cloaked bird of prey they can fire, which is something that they don't have the technology of, but they have it. And there's this great scene at the end where he's in the cloaked Klingon bird of prey and he's blowing the shit out of the Enterprise. And as he's destroying the Enterprise, he's on the comms and he's quoting Shakespeare repeatedly over the intercom. And DeForest Kelley, as the doc, has a great line where he says, "I'd give some real money for someone to shut this guy up." It's just, I just love the rapport of the original series crew. And at this point, again, they've been together so long. It's so natural. But yeah,
that's when they figured how to uncloak or at least discover where that vessel was, right?
Yeah, Spock says to McCoy, "Would you like to perform surgery on a torpedo with me?" They put together a special proton torpedo that when it explodes, basically opens up the cloaking device. And then you have the great moment with with Kirk and with Sulu double destroying the fucking bird of prey. It's an incredible.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It's awesome. It's just it gets me out of my seat every time. And again, is Silence of the Lambs probably a better movie? Yes, but am I more likely to once a year throw Star Trek VI in the DVD player? Yes. So I love that. So Star Trek VI is my number 3. Let's go over to the Manster. We're getting into the nitty gritty. Let's find out what his numero dos would say.
Numero dos. Well, I guess we can skip right over to Andrew at this point because my number 2 is Silence of the Lambs.
Okay. All right. Well, before we do though, real quick, did you see this in the theaters?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, because I was a big fan back then. I was a Thomas Harris fan. I've read his books, including Black Sunday, and I had to definitely go see that. Yep.
Black Sunday is the
awesome.
The Super Bowl thing, right?
Yeah, the Super Bowl. Yep.
Okay. All right, Andrew, what do you got for number 2?
Well, I guess I'm going to skip right on to Johnny Panache because my number 2 is Silence of the Lambs. But real quick, because I know you might ask the follow-up question, is I did not see this in the theater because I was 9 years old. But fun story, the first time I saw it, a lot of people, I don't know if it's just Connecticut or whether it's universal in some way that in middle school you all take this big class trip to Washington, D.C.?
Oh yeah, I did that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking to two guys in the region. So, I mean, like, but so we did that in 8th grade, and we all got hotel rooms, of course. So the hotel room I was sharing with friends of mine, we happened to catch that Silence of the Lambs was about to start on. Now, again, this is on cable. So I saw the most lukewarm version of Silence of the Lambs, and I was 13, whatever at the time, 13, 14 years old. I had watched horror movies like my whole life. I watched Texas Chainsaw when I was like 5 or 6 years old. I, am as desensitized as the next child. And then, I mean, Jesus Christ, that movie set me on my ear. It blew me away. I couldn't, like, we were literally away from our parents. We're on this field trip. We have our own hotel room, and I'm sitting there like, God, Silence of the Lambs is good. Couldn't take my eyes off of it. Didn't want to engage with my friends. Just was like mesmerized. So it has.
Do you recall what they did with the Ted Levine dancing scene on cable TV?
I think because I think there is a small moment where he's not tucked in and has like the kimono closed, I believe. So I think maybe it's like a quick dance and a cutaway. Up. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, if it was Lethal Weapon on like TNT, motherfucker would have become Mother Funster.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I always love those. Yeah. I remember Frog and Ashpole with There's Something About Mary was the one that always sticks in my head. But yeah, I'm sure they had some kind of fun, change up for that one. But yeah, it was like whatever TNT was showing in middle school.
Frog and Ashpole. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. I'm realizing I feel like the three of us are on like a train to the same destination. Like I feel like we're all heading towards the same thing. So let me get my number 2 out of the way.
What's your number 2?
My number
Mr.
2,
Panache.
Mr. Ghoulish Panache. My number 2, July 12th, 83.5 million. I saw it in the theaters, and I did not like it in the theaters. I remember thinking that was not a very good movie. About a year later, I saw it on VHS, Kids VHS, if you remember that. And
hell yeah.
it was one of those, there have been movies in my life like this where it just changed my mind. Wow, I really love that. And I've loved it since.
I know what you're talking about.
Directed by Catherine Bigelow, who went on to direct The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, and she made Near Dark, which is one of our favorite vampire films we talked about a year back or so. This is the Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze starring The Ex-Presidents Are Surfers, Point Break. It is truly an action classic. I love this movie. I think it's fucking fantastic. Keanu Reeves at this point was most known for Ted from Bill and Ted. He was moving into doing different things. Now, again, if you go past Bill and Ted, if you go a few years earlier, this guy showed he had range because he was in The River's Edge, which is not a funny. This is a serious movie, right? So I mean, he's known for Bill and Ted, but then he does things like Parenthood, where it's a little bit more serious. But then you get to Point Break, and you're like, wow, this guy could be an action star, and he does a pretty good job at it. One of the coolest names of all time, Johnny Utah, right?
Yeah.
Now
Utah two.
I mean, he so sounds like a quarterback. So
it's obviously Joe Montana, just translated.
Yeah.
But I mean, so Johnny Utah is an ex-college hotshot quarterback who got hurt, couldn't make it in the NFL. Goes into the FBI. He has to infiltrate this group of bank robbers whose modus operandi is they wear the ex-president masks over their face. Turns out it's Patrick Swayze playing Bodie and his group of fun-loving, surfing, skydiving, a bunch of guys that fund their lifestyle. They're thrill seekers, and they fund their lifestyles by robbing banks. And I will say this, I've said this I think before, maybe on the show, one of the best foot chase scenes in a movie ever.
It's great.
It's a great foot chase between Johnny
Reagan and
essentially
Johnny.
Reagan and Johnny, which ends with Johnny's old football injury getting aggravated. It's got one of my favorite epilogues where, it doesn't end necessarily where you want it to end. And a year later, we have this really kind of like this different scene where it takes place a year in the future. And let's just say, it's a 30-year-old movie, but, Utah gets his man in a way. Nature gets its man at the very least. The one weak point of this movie that I never liked was I never could believe that the fun, funny, gorgeous Keanu Reeves could really want anything to do with Lori Petty. I've never liked Lori Petty.
Come on.
Yeah, no.
Lori Petty's great. I love Lori
She is
Petty.
the absolute worst part of this movie. She doesn't sell it for me that you would want to be around her. She doesn't sell it to me that you would want to like have sex with her. She just doesn't work. If they had just dip into the pool of generic 90s actresses that were working at that time and pull any one of the names out that would have fit that age range, and any one of them would have worked better than Lori Petty.
It's just that Lori Petty has that sort of punk look to her.
She does, and I get it.
That's why they threw her in there. But I still like her.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I like Lori Petty. I'm not saying she's great, but she's just got a look that I dig.
She always annoyed me. She annoyed me in Point Break, which I love. She annoyed me in A League of Their Own, which I didn't love, but I could enjoy.
She's great in that movie.
She annoyed me in that,
she's
and then
really good in that.
And then she plateaued for me with annoyance when I took my ex-girlfriend to see Tank Girl in the theaters, which was one of the worst. Like, honestly, Tank Girl is so fucking bad, and she's essentially like, you know how people kind of say like Harley Quinn as a character is like a character that like should be in little doses because she's too much. Lori Petty as Tank Girl is like 2 minutes. That movie should be 2 minutes fucking long. It's so annoying and so bad. But yeah,
I never saw that.
So no, do not bother. Do not bother unless we have to do it on this show for some reason. Don't bother. All right. So my number two.
I also don't fully buy Keanu Reeves as the FBI role. He's not fully developed his acting skills yet in that.
Oh, see, I like him. I like him.
He's great in all the surfing roles and all the action roles, but in the FBI roles, it takes me out every once in a while.
See, I kind of like that though in that movie because he is supposed to be like a young agent who obviously wasn't on that path before. But I get what you're saying. And you know, Patrick Swayze, unfortunately passed away a few years ago. He wasn't always in stuff that I loved, but he's good in this. He's really good because you actually feel like, because the main struggle in this movie is that Johnny Utah starts to kind of like platonically fall in love with this guy. He like really likes him. You know, he's like, absolutely. God, I don't want, like the very last scene, like we were talking about, you know, he handcuffs him and he's like, don't do this. I'm just going to take you in. You know, I don't want this to go any further. And, you know, he really doesn't want anything to go further than it's gone. And Swayze plays that really well, where it's like, you know, he can make you really want to like him, but he's gonna force your hand. It's a great fucking movie. I'm actually, unless it pops up on one of your number ones, which I know it's not going to, I'm actually very surprised it didn't pop up on anybody else's list. I'm offended. I'm hurt, but I'm over it now. So Lloyd, can we now start talking about Terminator 2? I'm assuming.
Wait, whoa. You don't even know my number one yet.
Oh, if you're number one. all right.
It's Hudson Hawk, goddammit.
Oh, did you just pull the chip out of your head?
Oh, yes. Did you notice over my left shoulder right here?
What do you? Oh, is that the Terminator head?
Yes.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So Lloyd, what is
Terminator 2 Judgment Day? That's my number one.
Yeah, Lloyd even grew the Dark Fate beard out for the pandemic. So good job.
There you go.
Call him Carl.
Yeah.
Yeah, you may not have heard of this, you know, little movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, Robert Patrick, Joe Morton, the incomparable Edward Furlong.
Yeah, not for long. Edward Fur, not for long.
Jeanette Goldstein.
Yes. Yeah, you never know that she's hit. Most people don't
also
realize.
From Near Dark.
Near Dark and Vasquez and Aliens, yeah.
Yeah.
And Xander Berkeley.
Yeah, he has
a father.
Yeah, I always forget he's in it until the like two scenes he's in. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what can we say? This is all of our number one, right?
It's mine.
It's mine. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yep. So
it's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah. It's a nonstop 2-hour action movie. I
don't want to derail the love fest that's about to happen, I'm sure, but is this your best sequel of all time?
Ooh, that's a whole nother show, Andrew.
I know.
So let's hold that for a whole nother show.
Yeah,
that we could do. But I will say,
it's in the conversation.
It's in the conversation for sure. And I mean, it's helped so much by the fact that it's by the same guy, right?
Yes.
So we get James Cameron. I know him.
Even though it's 7 years?
7 years later, he has taken things that he's learned from while filming other things and incorporated them into making this. Okay, let me tell a real quick story. A buddy of mine from high school who actually has been, I haven't seen him in 30 years, 20, 28 years, whatever. Joe Doherty, who's been listening to the show and hitting me up and saying he's really enjoying the show. Shout out to Joe. You know how you have these weird random memories of things? So me and Joe used to talk about movies in school a lot and everything. I think Joe is 2 years older than me. I think maybe he was a senior when I was a sophomore. I remember very vividly being in Bob's Surplus store in Middletown, Connecticut, downtown, shopping, probably my parents, in the other section of the store. And I ran into Joe. And I remember talking to Joe, and Joe said to me, I went to the movies and I saw the trailer for Terminator 2.
Yeah, they did in front of Total Recall.
Okay. So now I'm talking to Joe, and this is obviously, kids, in the days before the internet, because I can't just dial up the trailer. So we're talking, and they're the scuttlebutt at the time, amongst in Starlog and stuff, is that Schwarzenegger was going to be the good guy in this one, right? Which he is, and that there was going to be another Terminator. Okay, so that's what you hear. So we're talking about that, and I remember Joe saying to me that there's an incredible effect in the trailer that the Terminator is now like liquid metal, and I can't wrap my head around that, right? Because if you
Mercurius.
Yes, he's Mercurius. You can't wrap your head around that. And I remember Joe explaining the scene to me that was in the trailer that I can remember specifically from the movie, was the scene where the T-1000 Robert Patrick is hanging off the helicopter, smashes the windshield in him, and pours himself in, and then takes control of the helicopter. I remember saying to Joe, I don't get what you're saying. He said to me, he goes, think about the water snake in the abyss. So the scene of the abyss with the water snake that forms Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's head. So that's what I was talking about. So he kind of got that effect looking decent in the abyss, and now 2 years after the abyss, he did something in a movie that we're talking about 30 years later that I shit you not, Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park hold up today like they were made today, and are better than a ton of shit that's made today.
100%. It's literally, you took it right out of my notes.
It's amazing. I see things now.
The same note.
Yeah, I see things nowadays that come out CGI. I mean, let's go back to the year 2000 when the Scorpion King came out of that fucking cave.
Yeah, it looks like a Sega Genesis game,
and it was literally the worst thing ever. That was 9 years after fucking T-1000. Okay. Yeah. Now we're 30 years later, and I still see shit that I can't imagine someone said, go ahead and let it go. We're going to use that. The standard rule should be, how can we use that when the T-1000 was in 1991? We can't use that. We cannot let that go out looking like this when that shit came out in 1991.
And you know what's so impressive about that? That invincible Quicksilver Angel of Death over there. It's like the heft, the weight that you can sense. It's not just a digital picture on a screen. It's got weight to it.
Right.
It's got gravity. If it doesn't have that, you just don't buy it.
No.
That's what makes these effects so good.
And this was the smartest launch I've ever heard in my life. Between the fact that they released a trailer in front of Total Recall, knowing Schwarzenegger was in the midst of this huge blow up, and knowing that Terminator 2 was just going to be the next thing, this huge deal. And they didn't even have a trailer ready when they were asked to kind of have a trailer ready for Total Recall. And they had Stan Winston, the legend, who won an Academy Award for his makeup on this movie. He cut a $550,000 trailer with all kind of the early effects that they were going to generate for the rest of the movie back in the 1990 before they even shot most of the movie.
Right.
So it's not like they were cutting a trailer from stuff they already had and all these things. I mean, because a lot of the great effects happen way after the fact. A lot of the Liquid Terminator stuff, they spent, I think, $5.5 million just on the Liquid Terminator through ILM. That's insane. Nobody had that kind of money. Like, just imagine, what were you talking about? Some movie that made like $65-70 million, and that was like, oh, that was good back then.
Right.
They spent, the original budget of this movie was 75, balloons up to 88, and then keeps going until the studio was like, whoa, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Because that's classic Cameron. And then it made every dollar that everyone ever had in perpetuity.
This movie was in the summer of 1991. This was a fucking life event for kids my age, for people a little bit older. I can so this is a whole nother show that maybe we'll do at some point, but the discussion of what the theater experience might be after this year. It might not be, there might not be a theater experience, but guys our age are lucky enough to go, as dumb as it might sound, there are certain movie going experiences you'll never forget. Terminator 2 is one I'll never forget because obviously I was out of school at that point. I think it was the year before my junior year. I remember this movie, I have it written down here, came out on July 3rd.
Yeah. Huge. I saw this one in the theater, if you want to ask that, John.
I was going to ask you that.
I did too.
Okay, so
being 9, I saw the shit out of this movie.
Yeah, you probably, and at your age, you probably saw it multiple times with your friend, going back and
so many times.
Yeah. So this movie came out on July 3rd. I remember with my buddies Jim and Dave, who we used to go to movies together, and my other buddy Jim. I remember we went in the paper as you did back then. So I think let's say July 3rd, let's say it was a Friday. We opened the paper up and there was an ad in the movie section, probably half the page with the poster, which was at that time, it was Schwarzenegger holding up the shotgun. Terminator 2 Judgment Day starts tomorrow. Special advanced screenings tonight at 8:00. Me and my friends got in the car, went to the Meriden movie theater in Meriden, Connecticut, got our tickets and sat down in a packed house.
Yeah.
This fucking movie blew the doors off the house, right?
Yeah.
Blew the scene. I remember people it was as quiet as a fucking church in the scene where the T-800 is walking through the mall in the the access tunnels. He's got the box of roses, and the T-1000 is coming towards him. Edward Furlong's in the middle, and then the scene where he opens the box of roses and unloads the shotgun into the T-1000. Grown men were jizzing. There was fucking explosions
people
of
were
jizz.
flinging it everywhere.
Yeah, flinging it across the room.
People were targeting me and throwing their jizz at me. I remember the scene where he's riding the motorcycle, and I'm not kidding. I remember this. He's riding the motorcycle, and he's coming with John Connor on the back of the bike, and he's coming up against a shut gate. And he shoots the gate and then spin cocks the shotgun.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Grown men exploding in cum shots everywhere. Like this movie, people are in the aisles twisting their nipples.
I think I did just last night when I rewatched it.
Seriously. People are in the aisles twisting their nipples. Men and women are making babies. This movie had an effect, but this is the true. I may have told this story on the show before, but it's worth one last time, and I'll retire it if I did tell it before. So we're watching the movie, and there's the old jokey comedian stereotype of African American audience members sometimes talking to the screen, and that can happen at times. There's these two black guys sitting like a row or two behind us, and at one point during like one of the like heaviest, like most insane action sequences, that's probably in that first freeway chase scene, one of the guys yells to the other guy, "And you wanted to go see the goddamn Rocket Man." Obviously talking about my number 5 picture, Rocketeer, which came out like 2 weeks before. And everybody's laughing. God, Terminator 2, without this becoming a Terminator 2 show, obviously we all picked it. This thing is, I watched it, I think like summer of 19 or so. I threw in the Blu-ray, which I had not watched in a couple years. And it is still, what's happening. It's still engrossing. The action is still awesome. When the cool little bits happen, the whole last scene in the foundry, when the T-1000 and him are fighting, it's amazing. There's a single shot in this movie that I always loved. Is he's fighting the T-1000. He grabs him from behind, slams him into a wall, and the T-1000 just inverts himself to face.
Yeah, he turns the other way.
He turns the other way, and the effect is fucking seamless again. And again, that was 30 years ago.
I know. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, when he shattered with the liquid nitrogen, and then Arnold shoots him and shatters him, did you for a second think that was the end of him?
No. I've seen movies. What were you going to say, Andrew?
Just the brilliance of this, and I have a love-hate relationship with Cameron, and because I think he's an absolute genius, and his best movies are some of the best movies of all time. But then sometimes he overthinks, and then he does something like Avatar, where I was just so bored, and I'm like, why am I watching Fern Gully in space? I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And then he's going to make 5 of them and ruin his career. So there's so many things that you can go back and forth with Cameron, but just the idea that in the first film, the idea to destroy Cyberdyne systems to prevent the future war was a cut scene from the first one that he basically just pocketed, waited 7 fucking years, and made one of the best movies of all time. That is brilliant. That is absurd. And there's so many of those little things, and just the preparation, and just and just knowing when to cut your losses or what to cut out is a brilliant tact. To go back to Silence of the Lambs, there's a great story, if you look it up online, of the screenwriter William Goldman, one of the best writers of all time, Princess Bride, Butch Cassidy, you keep going. He's an amazing screenwriter. He watched Silence of the Lambs before it was in Final Cut, basically. He watched a screener before it went public. And he said there was a 7 to 10 minute exposition scene right before the end, before she goes after where Buffalo Bill is. He's like, if you cut that movie out, your movie goes from being very good to one of the best movies I've ever seen. And they were like, but we're in Final Cut. We can't fucking do that. He's like, just try it and let me know what happens. Son of a bitch was absolutely right. They cut it. They win all the awards, everything. Literally Demi kisses the feet of William Goldman for how much he was right. This movie, same thing, where it's you have one of those alternate ending situations where this movie was supposed to have an elderly Sarah Connor sitting in the park telling the story about the Terminator, watching John play with his daughter and tying her granddaughter's shoes. The unknown road, the kind of the open end, is a way better way to end this film.
Way better
than anything that's is saccharine like that. There's no way that this type of heavy, awesome movie, jam-packed, action-packed movie, should have ended like that. God, no. And so they did that, and it's perfect that way.
I've seen the extended cut as well, and it does nothing for the movie. There's my opinion. There's nothing in the extended cut that should have stayed in the movie. They got it right with the the theatrical release.
There's one scene in the extended cut that I like, and it's not important to the movie. I just like it because I think it shows that the T-1000 is still trying to get used to his powers, or at least how to use his I guess abilities. Is when he grabs that striped railing and he turns the same color. And then he has to shake it off. It's almost because that's towards the end of the movie, I think. It's almost like he's been damaged a little bit and they're trying to show that. But you know what? You don't need to see that. I think it's a cool scene. It's a cool scene because it's a cool effect. And again, not to get too far again into every bit of this, but Robert Patrick deserves so much credit because, Schwarzenegger made the Terminator, right? In 84. That he is the Terminator. To get this guy who's a relative unknown at this point, who went on to have a very good career doing different things, but he's menacing and he does it, and they picked him for this reason. In the first Terminator, every time they show a Terminator, which is more than once because there's the flashback forward scenes, it's Franco Columbo, is another one of Terminator's strongman buddies. The Terminators are all these giant guys. Well, you know what? You're expecting that in part 2. And what do you get? You get a guy who's essentially kind of Lloyd size. You know what I mean? Yeah. A very normal adult male, I don't want to say smaller, but not a Schwarzenegger. Yeah, and he's just
average size guy, lean, athletic looking, but relentless
and super dangerous because, as he proves, every part of his body is a weapon, like, everything, and every part of his body is essentially another part. Yeah, good guys. I commend you. I commend myself. Great choice. Let's do real quick without getting too far into the movies. Let's go to Andrew first. A couple of honorable mentions.
So John, I'm going to try to, hit the X marks the spot on the movie that you were trying to get.
Oh,
me to say,
right. Yeah.
I am going to guess My Girl.
No.
Okay.
The movie.
Addams Family?
Nope.
Robin Hood?
Nope.
I thought it was Adam's Family.
Nope. The movie that I saw it in the theaters. Never really cared for it myself.
You mentioned it the other day.
Yeah. The movie that I find that a lot of people of probably 6 or 7 or 8 years younger than me, like you are, Andrew, tend to love, quote, is Hook.
Yeah, a whole bangarang thing.
Bangarang.
Here's the thing.
Yeah,
I am a huge Spielberg fan. And especially around this time, damn well I enjoyed this movie. However, in retrospect, it's not good. It's got good parts. Robin Williams is acting his ass off, and Hoffman's good. Like Hoskins is a standout, but like there's not. It's too corny and dumb in a lot of spots that when you're my age, yeah, maybe like back then I was like, oh yeah, Bangarang and Cake Eater and all those other whatever fucking lines that you can pull out of that movie. Yeah, it's all right. And I've probably rewatched it a bunch of times on cable or whenever after the fact, but that is not, especially in the history of and career of Steven Spielberg, that's nowhere near the top tier of anything. So I totally get it. It was a blockbuster. It's a Spielberg, and everything should line up to at least maybe sneak it into the 5, but nah.
All right. Well, I'm glad. I like to be wrong, and I was convinced. Like, it just seems like so many people love that movie. Okay, so what were your honorables?
So I will say that My Girl was close.
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie. That's a movie that, being that age, the age of the characters, Macaulay Culkin in peak form, the super sad ending that still just sticks in your gut.
Yeah, that's a real turn, that movie. Like, what the bees? What happened?
Yeah. Pre Nicolas Cage Wicker Man bee action. It's a tough sit at the end. It's so sad. I will stand for My Girl too. It's not a good movie, but I will watch it every time it's on for no reason. Because again, the age level thing,
right?
And Anna Klumsky, I adore her. She's adorable. She's cute as hell, and it's so much fun to watch them. So that was close. I must put that in my top 5. Cape Fear, like Scorsese's Cape Fear, is really well done. That's good De Niro. There are so many movies in here that were just ruined by like The Simpsons or parody movies.
Yeah.
Cape Fear with the Sideshow Bob is so goddamn funny. I'm a Disney guy, but Beauty and the Beast isn't like super high for me, but that almost in a lukewarm year could have possibly got on there. But mostly it was the studio comedies that were close. Like Naked Gun is one of my favorite movies of all time, but 2.5 doesn't make the top 5, but it's not like between that and Hot Shots coming out in the same year. That's goofball heaven for me.
Yeah.
And and Hot Shots, I think I can quote more than 2.5. So, both of those were close, but not there. What About Bob? Same thing. The First Addams Family and Dutch. Like all those movies are, movies that I've seen a million times. House Party 2 for the Pajama Jammy Jam, I've seen a million times.
Pajama Jammy Jam, yeah.
John Candy's Delirious. Like all those like studio comedies I've seen so many times because they were on a million times when I first got Comedy Central. But so they hold a place in my heart, especially I would say probably the best of all those that got maybe close. Probably either Hot Shots or Dutch. Like those are probably the closest ones for me. Because if I remember correctly, Dutch's late stage John Hughes wrote script. I think that was his script.
So I talked to Larry the other day, and he said that Dutch was the last good John Hughes movie, and Larry's a big John Hughes guy.
I think only Curly Sue came out after that. if I'm not mistaken.
Curly Sue, and there's probably something that's a little bit more kiddie. I think he started getting even kiddier at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, I'll go through mine real quick. Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear is fantastic. It is almost entirely built out of jokes from the actual police squad show.
Yes.
If you ever watch the show and watch 2.5, they essentially just took a lot of the jokes there. Let's see. New Jack City. I love New Jack City. That was just always a favorite of mine.
About that.
Always a favorite. The Last Boy Scout is a tremendous Bruce Willis action movie. It's goofy, but I've always enjoyed that one. And a littler known, and another John Hughes one. So this is actually a John Hughes movie as well. I think he just wrote it. Frank Whaley and the, as we mentioned before, incredibly hot Jennifer Connelly, Career Opportunities. Which at the time, the biggest thing about that movie was I didn't realize that Target was even a real place. So, but yeah, it's a great movie. Master, what do you have for any honorables? And then I also, after you're done, I have a couple of our friends from Twitter to read off, and then we'll button it up.
All right.
Come on, bring in Suburban Commando, Lloyd.
I have just a few honorables, nowhere near as much as Andrew, that's for sure.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I literally listed all the movies of 1990.
Yeah. I think you listed all the movies you watched in 91.
It's possible.
No. I'm pretty much, you'll see from these, I was on par with your other guys' choices, or you guys' other choices. So Point Break, that was the one that I pulled out for JFK. Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, City Slickers, and the last one, The Commitments.
Okay.
The Irish band movie.
Yeah, that was a pretty popular independent movie that year. All right, let's go to our friends on Twitter. We'll start with Scary Larry because he did give me his list. Number 5, The Addams Family. Number 4, The Fisher King, which I've never seen, but I've always heard great things about. Number 3, Boys in the Hood. Number 2, Keanu Reeves and River Phoenix, My Own Private Idaho.
Yeah.
That was on my longer list as well.
Number 1, Silence of the Lambs, and then we'll go over to some of our other friends here. At Dre Driven 83, he didn't give me a numbers, but I'm going to go up because I think I know which way this is going. My Girl, as Andrew mentioned. What about Bob? Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go.
Secret of the Ooze, baby.
TMNT2, Secret of the Ooze, New Jack City, and T2. Keith Larson, our buddy from Geek Time Network, at Geek Time Net. Check them out. A bunch of great shows. They do some great live streams on Tuesday nights. He's going this way. Number 5, Silence of the Lambs. Number 4, Barton Fink. Number 3, Terminator 2. Number 2, Star Trek 6. Keith is a huge Star Trek guy. And number one, taking the movie that Lloyd reluctantly put at number 5, JFK.
It's pronounced Jifk.
Yeah, Jifka. Or is it Gifka?
Yes.
Our buddy Lonnie, who is a good old high school friend of mine, who designed the Panache Comics superhero logo, at Lonomatic on Twitter. He gave us The Last Boy Scout, La Femme Nikita, which was remade a couple years later as Point of No Return in America. The Fisher King again, Star Trek 6 again, and T2. Arguing with myself, our buddy Chris. Number 5, Backdraft. Backdraft didn't get a lot of love, but that was a solid movie. Number 4, The Rocketeer. Thank you, Chris, for saying that. I felt lonely. Number 3, Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs getting a lot of love. Number 2, Terminator 2. Number 1, Point Break. And then finally, our buddy Stu from SWO Productions. He gives us Beauty and the Beast at number 5. His number 4 was the number 5 that I wrestled with over The Rocketeer because I love this movie. It could be number 5. It's so awesome. I had to pick The Rocketeer over it. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. It is a phenomenal sequel. Now that Face the Music has come out, and in my opinion, made it a phenomenal trilogy, it even adds to it a little bit more. Station. I know Manster hates this movie, but I love Bogus Journey. Stu's number 3, The Addams Family. Number 2, Hot Shots, and number 1 is T2. And Stu also left a little note of also don't try to be all cute and put anything but T2 in the top spot. It's the clear cut number 1.
There's lists with doesn't even have it. I hate anyone who does that.
Yeah,
like you just out cool yourself. No, stop it. Stop it right now.
Just stop.
Yeah, do you think anybody that doesn't have it is just trying to be cool?
That and Silence of the Lambs. If those 2 movies are not in your top 5 in 91 in a very lukewarm year, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I don't know what you're doing.
All right. So this has been the first episode of Pine Comics for 2021. We look forward to moving on through the rest of the year. We're going to have a great year. Andrew, the Nomcast, phenomenal. Thank you for coming on. Let everybody know where they can find you. And if there's anything you want to mention about the Nomcast, anything coming up, let them know as well.
Yeah, in the new year, I mean, Netflix schedule is not light. They still have a bunch of stuff that's going to, hopefully, maybe garner some late Oscar buzz or things like that, things that they picked up during the pandemic or during some of the festivals that did actually air. So Pieces of a Woman is a movie that might have a Best Actress thing in there. There's a movie called The Dig. There's a movie that they shot during the pandemic that's coming out in January that's supposed to be very well done that got picked up for several $1 million from Netflix. So there's a bunch of things to key in January. But like I said, the end of their year was so good. And a lot of people are really tuning in. I appreciate that, especially, for how many times I've been on the pint now and kind of the crossovers you and I do all the time. And it's been wonderful collaboration between you both. So I appreciate that. Subscribe now to get all those fun movies and all the past episodes. Right now, we just I think we're about to hit our 90th episode. So we're closing in on that 100 episode mark. So that's awesome. It seems.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, just trying to stay consistent. You know how hard that is. So that's all we're trying to pull off here in pandemic, trying to stay focused and keep releasing stuff. So, but yeah, it's at Nomcast Pod on all the socials, nomcastpod.com. We'll have all the stuff that you need there. We even have a cool collections tab if you're like, hey, I really like horror movies, or hey, I really like Christmas movies, or hey, I like rom-coms. You can go down and select all the episodes that fall into those categories, and you can just go for broke. You like animated movies, they're all there. Oscar movies, there you go. So I try to do my best with those categories. So if you want to binge us, we make it a little easier for you on that level too. So, subscribe now, listen in, and check out, if you're listening to us now, we just did one with your boy John Amenta doing the Midnight Sky, George Clooney. He's a very handsome man. And I'm not talking about George Clooney.
And if you don't know who John Amenta is, remember he's Ghoulish Panache.
Yes.
I think we have the title.
Yeah, Ghoulish Panache. Andrew, thanks again. We love having you on. Start thinking we're going to have you back soon for your next Pint Movie Invitational. We talked about that. Start thinking about the next rounded off year that we could do pretty soon on this again. So start thinking of something maybe 15, 10, 5, something that'll work out into a rounded off number from 2021. And we'll hit the next one soon. Manster, why don't you do the stuff you do so well and tell everybody out there to figure out how to find us, where to listen, and all that good stuff.
Well, you can find us at pinacomics.com. You might find an article or two there. Subscribe to this here podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, all those podcatchers. Give us a 5-star review if you would. That'd be great. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Do the little bell to get the notifications. You see some good video stuff there. Facebook and Twitter, it's at Pint of Comics. On Instagram, it's at Pint_O_comics. And you can hear Sir John still talking on the radio. It's amazing that he's got so many great episodes up there every Sunday night. WESU Middletown, 88.1 FM. And on WESUFM.org, you can stream it.
That's right. And you know what? Manster mentioned something a second ago, and we always throw this into that whole package at the end, but I'm going to put a plea out there. If you do listen, if you do enjoy, we love nothing more than bringing you entertainment every week. Hopefully you learn something. Hopefully you have a good time, and we're going to keep doing this for as long as we want to do it for. But if you got a second, maybe hop on the old Apple machine and give us a review. It doesn't have to be 5-star. If you don't feel it's a 5-star show, give us some pointers. We might take them. Hey, you know what? Honestly, we do this for free, and when we give it to you for free, we might just say fuck you. But at the same time, just throw a review on there. Have a laugh. Tell people that you like us. Maybe more people will listen.
Just do it.
it's extremely gratifying feeling. I'm sure Andrew can tell you as well, to see your numbers move up, to see people listening, to get feedback from listeners. So that's my request from you guys this year is, if you have not reviewed, if you listen, if you got a few minutes, if you're on, Pornhub, if you're done, if you're cleaning yourself up, whatever it is, if you're on your computer, if you're banking, if you're watching a movie, whatever it is you're doing on your computer, if you're buying an infant on the black market, I don't want to know what the fuck you're doing. Just maybe when you're done with that activity, jump on over and hit us on Apple and give us a little bit of a review. And then you can hear the Manster say the magic words that make this end.
Hasta la vista, baby.
It's over, Johnny. It's over. Nothing is over. Nothing. You just don't turn it off.